Other reason why I'm particularly happy, although I would rather be happy for some other reasons, is that when we talk about the mountains and the Hindu Kush Himalayas, this is ground zero for climate change. This is where climate change happens. And if we want to understand what is going to happen to the world, we see what is happening in the Himalayas today. So this is the proverbial canary in the coal mine. So if the mountains are healthy, the planet is going to be healthy. So this is really where the discourse should start. And I thank His Excellency, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, for his leadership in this issue. I remember he was very vocal during the last UN General Assembly. Then he took it forward to the COP28 process. And now we are here organizing a dialogue of experts. But we don't need experts to tell us what is happening. All of the excellent presentations that we have had, including from the Chief Minister, these are facts that we already know. It is nothing new. So why are things not changing when the science is so clear, when the science is so conclusive? Why are things not changing? We can talk about the impacts, we can talk about the effects, but if you only talk about the effects, then we become also part of the problem. So where does the solution lie? When we talk about solutions, we look at, if we are treating a disease, we look at the symptoms of the disease and the disease itself. What we are doing here is talking about the symptoms of the disease. We are not talking about the disease itself. And that disease is carbon emissions. So unless we decarbonize, whatever we try to do in terms of adaptation and resilience is never going to be enough. Here we are talking about resilience, we are talking about adaptation, but there are limits to adaptation. There are limits to resilience. We are asked to formulate national adaptation plans on the one hand, and our carbon emissions increase on the other. How can you solve a problem by making the problem worse? We are growing the problem and then we are talking about solutions. This discourse has to change. And when we talk about emissions, it doesn't really matter, with all due respect, whether Bangladesh and Nepal achieve net zero tomorrow. That is not going to make any difference to the global emissions. The G20 nations account for 81% of global emissions. And if I just think back to what Selvin Hart on behalf of the UN said, we have the moral voice. Yes, we have the moral voice. We talk about climate justice. And yes, climate justice, there are three elements that I would like to bring out. It applies to Nepal, it applies to Bhutan, it applies to Bangladesh. First is, as the Chief Secretary said, those who have least caused the problem are the most impacted, number one. Number two, those who have the least capacity to adapt are being asked to adapt beyond their capacity. And number three, governments are having to choose between fighting climate change and fighting poverty, promoting food security, promoting sustainable development. And that is a greater injustice. No country in the world should have to choose between fulfilling their development aspirations and fighting climate change. Why should it be either or? This is a problem that we have not created. And we saw from the Chief Minister's presentation that you need billions for your adaptation. In Bangladesh, just in this year, we have allocated $3.5 billion to fight climate change among 25 line ministries. That money could have been spent building roads, building hospitals, building educational institutions, empowering the youth, empowering the women, but I'm having to spend it on climate change adaptation. So to me, really, the issue is, why is there a lack of political will? Why is there a lack of political will? That has not been mentioned here. Why do countries commit time and again during the COP process and don't deliver? We are talking about trillions for adaptation we'll be talking about a new finance goal in Baku. The billions have not been delivered, and we are talking about trillions. We can subsidize fossil fuels to the extent of $7 trillion a year, but the national adaptation plans are not funded. This, I'm sorry to say, but this double standard has to stop because time is running out. Time is running out. What will you do when all the glaciers go? When all they melt? So for us, it's existence. If you don't have fresh water, how will the people of Bangladesh survive? And Bangladesh is squeezed because we have got glacial melt in the north and we have got rising sea levels in the south. So the argument, the narrative in terms price free or loss, it's not just the mountains, it's the ice sheets, it's the snow, it's the glaciers, it's the permafrost. And how do we then globalize the mountain agenda? That is really the challenge that we have. And we are not just talking about, we're not just talking about Bangladesh and rising sea levels. If you look at the US, the eastern seaboard of the US, from Boston down to Miami, Louisiana, these are going to be areas underwater if sea level continues to rise. So when development partners want to help us, yes, we appreciate your help, we appreciate the funding, we appreciate the capacity building, but the biggest help that you can do is to stop the emissions. That is really the help that we need. Now that may sound uncomfortable, but that is the reality. And Selvin Hart said, speak truth to the power. What is the truth? This is the truth, that we have to stop emissions. If we don't do that, now we are what? We are on 2.6 degrees Celsius, 2.6, based on current pledges. If 100% of the pledges are met, we are going to be 2.6 degrees. What is going to be left of the Himalayas, the glaciers, if it is 2.6? Even at 1.1, look at the damage, look at the destruction, look at the heat waves. Even 1/10 of a degree makes a difference. So we are almost double where we should be. So this narrative has to change. And it's all very well, us being supported, but I think the support where it is most needed is in that. And the important thing is the choices that we make today. Of course, there is some damage which has already been caused. That's irreversible. We have to live with that. The IPCC report also says that. Now what we can do is to limit the future damage. So even if we achieve 1.5 degrees Celsius, still 30% of the ice, the glaciers will be lost in the Himalayas. That's gone forever. And it will take thousands of years, if at all, for us to come back to the current level. So the time is running out. What we need is not just words. We need action. And that action has to be delivered now, because tomorrow is going to be too late. What we can do from here is to not talk about it just as the problem of the mountains. It is a problem for the world. If we can get it right here, we get it right for the rest of the world. So this is a global existential issue that we are talking about. That's the importance of what we are going to do over the next 2 days. And I think we have the minds, we have the solutions, we can also perhaps get the funding, but the political will to act is something that we cannot generate here. That has to be generated in the capitals of the world. Because whatever we do, once we cross the 1.5 degree threshold, is going to be too little, too late. We don't want to be in that situation. So Bangladesh, of course, stands in strong solidarity with the other nations who are facing this. And for us, it's not just sea level. We will lose 18% of our land area. Millions will be displaced, climate refugees. Salinity intrusion is impacting our productivity, our food security. We also have droughts just a small country like Bangladesh experiencing the full spectrum of climate change impacts. So we really need to act. We call it an existential, not just a threat, it's a crisis. It is happening now. It is not something that will happen 10 years from today. We are living it. We are witness to it. The other area we do, when it comes to funding, when it comes to adaptation, yes, we must have a strong voice. When it comes to research, the world is now waking up to the imperatives of adaptation. They want to know how has Bangladesh done well. They will want to know how has Nepal coped. So how can we combine our resources? And the last point, let's not just look to others. Let us see what we can do, how much we can fix by our own initiatives, by our own creativity. And I think that will make the difference as we move forward. Let me end by thanking the Ministry of Environment of Nepal for the excellent arrangements. I know it's going to be a very productive 2 days, and I once again thank the Right Honorable Prime Minister of Nepal for his initiative, for his leadership, and we look forward to that going up to Baku, COP29, and thereafter COP30 in Brazil. I wish you all excellent deliberations. Thank you very much.